Welcome to the Church Communications Podcast. We want to help you become a church communications expert. We understand it's a challenging and ever-changing role because we've worked in the church too, which is why we built a community of over 30,000 church leaders that are ready to support and cheer you on. Your hosts for the show are Katie Allred, Kenny Jahng, with special guest host from the Church Communications team. They're here to help you and equip you to better reach your community. We'll talk shop with practitioners, professionals, and communications experts about what's working, what's not, and what's next.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Church Communications Podcast. I'm your host, Abby McCulley. I serve as the Director of Events and Membership here at Church Comms, and today I am so glad to be joined by a very special guest, Jon Haley. Jon has served in church ministry in many ways for over 20 years and is currently serving as the assistant pastor at his home church in Pennsylvania. He has helped thousands of ministries with technology, database management, and communications tools, and now is an account executive for Servantkeeper church management software. Jon, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. Yeah. So today, Jon is going to walk us through Servantkeeper, which is some awesome church software. I don't know a ton about it, so I'm really excited to learn about it. It is under the umbrella of Faithlife, and we know that they make tons of amazing products. We love working with them. A lot of our group members use a lot of different Faithlife software. So, Jon, let's just get started hearing a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your role at Servantkeeper.
Sure. Well, I'm not a very exciting person. I do live in the wonderful state of Pennsylvania. And I live only 3 miles away from Servantkeeper's headquarters, so it's a really nice college town of Lock Haven. I've got a wonderful wife, 3 kids, so they keep me busy. My background is actually in music. I have a master's degree in classical guitar, so that's why I had to go out and get a real job. But as you said in the intro, I serve as an assistant pastor at my church, and it's a very small church. Most churches are below 100 people, and so my church definitely falls in that category. And I am I wear so many hats that I can relate to pretty much anybody that I talk to, whether it's finance or preaching and teaching or the AV people. I've done it all, so I really enjoy my job and relating with those folks.
Awesome. It sounds like you have a lot in common with a lot of our listeners. That's something we hear a lot, is the wearing a lot of different hats.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it sounds like a very interesting job, and it sounds like you get to fulfill a lot of different roles. And so that's really awesome. And so let's start off by just hearing a little bit about what Servantkeeper is. What does it do? Just give us a little bit of background on that.
Sure. Well, Servantkeeper falls under that category of software. It's church management software, which helps you keep up with and organize a church, membership, attendance, directories, contributions, and a lot more stuff that you can do. We've been around for nearly 3 decades now, and
Wow.
have served about 30,000. Could be 35,000. It's kind of hard to tell from the earlier days, but many churches. And I've been here as an account executive for about 8 years now, so almost a decade. And it's just been a great tool. It's a great way to serve a church. And as I know, a lot of your listeners know, that it's a really important tool to have.
Yes.
I tell everybody's got a database. It's either on a napkin, it's in your head, it's in an Excel spreadsheet, or you got a full-fledged system like Servantkeeper. So
Yes.
really, really important.
Yeah, and if you don't have one like Servantkeeper, maybe it's time to consider it, because I know I've been in the situation of just scrolling databases in Excel spreadsheets, just line after line after line, like 3,000, 4,000 names and people, and trying to keep track of stuff that way it's overwhelming for one, and there's so many alternatives now, like Servantkeeper, that we can use to that.
It is, and I love, my role as an account executive. It's just to take a call from a church, whether it's a church of 10 people or several hundred or 1,000 people, and just kind of listen to their needs and figure out exactly what their needs are, and kind of adapt to that situation. So Servantkeeper is very good at that.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And you mentioned no matter what size church it is. I think sometimes people think that maybe they don't need like some kind of software, some kind of like really technical system if they only have, say, 80 members on a regular basis, or 100 or a couple of hundred. But you're saying it could definitely work for some of these smaller churches, and it maybe even is vital to some of them.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a hard enough time keeping up with my kids' birthdays. So having 3 kids, but then even in the church my size, whether it's below 50 people or 100, these things are really important for us to be able to connect with people, especially we've seen this in the last couple of years with COVID. I'm sick and tired of talking about COVID, but it is one of those things that the church really needs to have a tool so we can stay connected with people and make notes and just really kind of pick up where we left off. And if you're a pastor and you've got so many different hats, you can't keep up with all of that on a napkin. And so having that tool is really great. So yeah, Servantkeeper is a great fit for churches of all sizes, really.
You talk about like staying connected and keeping people connected, and something that we've been talking about just like internally on our team as well as in the group and in some of the different things that we've been putting out there is the idea that data helps us connect with people. And I think for so long we've been considering data just as it's like sterile and cold, and it's not necessarily like a means for community or a means for connection with people. So do you have maybe like any examples of ways that data does help us connect better with people who are maybe in our church, maybe potentially have visited our church, are going to come back? Things like keeping up with their birthdays and making notes about them. Are there any features in Servantkeeper that really serve to build community in that way?
Yeah, I think that, well, first off, defining your data points, like making connections. We make connections with people because of data. We know their name, we know their history, we know their birthdays. So we need to have a tool that's going to track all that, number one. Number two, yeah, Servantkeeper does make tools for that. And it's not just necessarily having a container to be able to like mark a birthday. Maybe we want to send out a birthday card or postcards to everybody in the church whose birthday is this month. Well, have one type of postcard or one letter, and then just click a button and it gives you all your labels for your postcards. You could paste it on there. You can email all your people to have those birthdays. So those types of things are going to be really important because it's going to make people feel connected, and they are. I mean, it's just on a larger scale. The larger the church, the harder this gets. So you need something that kind of scales in that capability. So having that capability of pulling those kinds of reports is really important. One tool that I love about Servantkeeper is called Touchpoint Tracking. So it basically, Servantkeeper will allow you to track anytime you reach out to somebody, whether you send out a text or an email blast through SK Notify, or we have a mobile ministry app for pastors. So a pastor can look up anybody in the database, can dial their phone number, send a text, and it'll track a touch point. It'll mark that they got a phone call, that they got a text.
Oh, wow.
You can customize touch points. So like if a pastor wants to keep up with hospital visits and track all the notes, then that would be a tool that a pastor could utilize in Servantkeeper. And again, it's not just about marking it down as a set of data. We want to do something with it. So maybe once a month, a pastor and a pastor's team, they come together. Maybe they've got assistant pastors or other leaders, elders and deacons, and they can pull a report for all the touch points in the ministry, and they can even pull it by user, which means a head pastor could pull a touch point report to see how the youth pastor has been reaching out to the kids. So that's just one example of how you can kind of create that connection between leaders and the people. So it's really a powerful tool.
I think that's really, I think that's a great example, first of all. And like you said, I feel like that just makes people feel so much more connected, especially in terms of like a really large church where they may feel like kind of lost in, all of the people and all of the activities and everything. That's a very personal way that you can connect with somebody and to make them feel kind of like brought in. And I feel like it sort of removes that barrier between the leadership and the people in the congregation.
Yeah, absolutely. And the larger the church, the more important it is to have the capability and the tools to kind of hone in on a subset of people, because that's what creates that, that relative communication or the relevant communication. So Another example I would use oftentimes is, we might want to be able to run contribution statements for just the visitors of the church that came in that year, and have that be a totally different contribution statement layout than what we would do for our average members.
Right.
And so Servantkeeper allows you to take those data points and really drill down into that. So smaller churches won't use that as much, but
Right.
It's a powerful tool.
I think that is super helpful. And I think that's maybe things that people don't even, like if someone has that idea, they're like, oh, I want to create this kind of report. They have no capability to do that. Like it seems so unattainable. But this makes it sound like really, really simple. And I know that something that you guys talk a lot about at Servantkeeper is efficiency and how it can really save you time, really streamline the workflow, which I think is really important because that allows us more time working in the church, more time connecting with people, focusing on other things. So do you have any other examples of like ways that it could really increase efficiency and really save time, make sure that everyone's on the same page?
Well, I think that one of the Servantkeeper's strong suits, because there's a lot of programs out there, but the reason Servantkeeper's been in business for so many years is that it has a feature called Groups Keeper, and it's basically like a saved search. But it's a saved search that allows you to connect all these different data points, and it updates automatically, and that it allows you to run reports on that. So a silly example would be something like this. If a church wanted to send a mail-merged email or a letter, to a list of people that came to the church, 3 times during a certain date range, that gave a certain amount of money to a certain account and drive a Toyota truck and live within a zip code that starts with 135, you could do that. And the moment somebody matches all that criteria, they're in that group automatically.
Oh, wow.
And then Servantkeeper takes it a step further, and it's not just giving you a list. It's going to say, I want a directory for those people. I want mailing labels for those folks. I want my note report for those folks. So it's extremely powerful when it comes to the reporting side, and it allows you to connect the attendance to the contributions to the membership info. So you can intersect all those data points. A less silly example would be, let's pull a report for all of the leaders in the church. So give me a list of all my leaders, but then I want to just see what's been their average attendance, or what, how are they giving? How involved are they?
Yeah.
So those kinds of things are really important to have that capability.
I feel like with giving especially, it saves so much time with contributions. I remember one time I was working at a nonprofit. It was an Excel spreadsheet situation, and we would have to send thank you letters. That was one of my tasks, was to send thank you letters to all of the donors for like the last 3 months or whatever. And physically pulling up their address and handwriting a label, or, having to type it all out and print labels for all of those took, literally like weeks to do all of that. And so the capability to just be able to like press a button and have it sent to the printer and be good to go, that's incredible. That's awesome.
Or emailed, and Servantkeeper allows members to download their own statements. So they can pull a statement whenever they want.
That's awesome. So you don't even have to wait for it.
Nope.
Perfect. So what are some like common questions that you get? Maybe someone is working out of a different software. Maybe they don't have a software at all. And they're thinking like, we need to do this. We need to invest in this. This would be super helpful to our church and to our community. What are some like common questions that you get, or maybe some things that people want to know before they commit?
Really, I think the most common questions you're going to run into, and I'm just flying by the seat of my pants here, basically, can you do directories?
Right.
Can you track attendance? Can you do contributions? And those are the kind of the big 3.
Right.
And it's funny because churches don't often, some do, some are very good at this, but I think once they start to think more in terms of like data is connected to people, that's when the questions really start to arise, So like if I wanted to pull a list of all, the membership and do a directory, that's really great. And that's usually what a church wants. They call me up and say, everything's all over the place. Susie so-and-so or Johnny so-and-so has it in a filing cabinet, and I've got to, it's all in paper and I can't find it. I got to go drive to the church and look at it. Right. And so those types of things, the common questions are going to all revolve around, the accessibility of it. And are we going to be able to make it our own. So customizing is another big thing.
Right.
So Servantkeeper is very, very customizable. So those would be kind of the biggest ones. If I've answered your question, I'm not sure, but
no, yeah, you totally did. And let's talk about that a little bit. How user friendly is it? Could say like, could my mom go in there and just know exactly like where everything is and how to do it? Does it take a little bit of like working with it, playing with it, a little bit of training? And as far as like the customizability and the flexibility, is that something your team has to handle, or can the actual like church staff, can they edit it and build it the way that they want it themselves?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, for years, I mean, we've done live workshops all across the country for years, and when we do our presentations, we always talk about like 5 things that a church software should have. So number 1, easy to use.
Mm-hmm.
So Servantkeeper is very easy to use, fully automated. We don't want to be spending all our time trying to update records and lists. So that's what Groups Keeper is all about.
Yep. Amen.
Affordable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It can't be, spending $20,000, $30,000 a year for church management software for the average church. Customizable. So it's got to be customizable. So that is a big thing that churches ask about. Can I make it my own? Because every church has different terminology.
Right.
And then accessibility. So the ability to go in like field names, when you talk database terms here,
Right.
I can pretty much name any field name whatever I want. And Servantkeeper is so customizable in that sense that I've actually sold to food banks, TV stations, radio stations. I think we even sold to a couple nursing homes. I mean, like, it's so customizable. You can really make it work for whatever your situation. And so that's very easy to do. As far as the user friendliness of it, I think it just depends on how deep they're going to go with it. I think Servantkeeper is extremely user friendly. And there's just like any software, there's a couple little tips and tricks you got to know about. But if you learn 2 or 3 things that are very simple, I mean, they're not hard. It's just like, how to search for a name,
Right.
how to build a group, simple things, then you would be up and running in no time at all. And it does automate so much stuff for you that it's just super helpful. It makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, it really sounds like it.
But I think that you got to keep in mind too, when people ask for user friendly, oftentimes that correlates with can't do a lot.
Yeah.
And so Servantkeeper is one of those rarities, if not the only one that I've seen, where it balances that line between being extremely powerful and user friendly. And so that's the big benefit of Servantkeeper.
No, you're right. I think a lot of people, you're right, they associate with like, oh, it's so easy to use, it must not be that great. Like if anyone can do it, like how powerful can it actually be? But I think that's a lot of people's hangups is like, okay, I'm going to get this software. We're going to get everything inputted, and then I'm not going to know what to do. Like, I'm just going to have all this stuff, but it's not going to like work for me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a little bit of hesitation. But the way you're describing it really sounds like once you get comfortable with it, once you get set up, you should be good to go.
Yeah, I think a church should really focus in on number one, what's their goal? So is it just tracking membership and active members? Great. We'll build a group for you on how to do that. And they could do it themselves very easily. And once they've got that, then they've got access to all the other reports. So birthday reports, anniversary reports, attendance reports, all for just the active members. So it is very, very easy. I think sometimes people will look at a software again and they'll say, I can't figure it out. And then they give up. Mm-hmm. But it's the same way with anything in life.
Right.
Driving a car is really easy, but it wasn't the first time.
Yeah, that's a very good
Maybe
point.
that's a bad example. No,
I think that's perfect.
Very easy to drive.
Very easy to drive. Perfect. That's what we're looking for. And I think a lot of times people just I feel like a lot of churches have access to data and they're just not utilizing it because they haven't exactly made that switch in their heads to like data equals, a touch point, a place to start a relationship with people. And so I really think that knowing people's birthdays, knowing people's anniversaries, knowing who they are, where their kids go to school, what they're involved in, what their interests are, that is powerful. And I think that, how are you going to do anything with it if you don't have it organized and have it like in an actual, a way that it can be taken in and reviewed and actually come to make sense.
Well, even I would say, like, I was using this as an example. I think I'm terrible with dates, so bear with me. And I apologize if I'm offending anybody, but I think it was last year, Texas and Houston had some horrible flooding.
Yeah.
And so a church that has 200-300 people and is tracking skills and talents in Servantkeeper could pull up a list of all the plumbers in the church. And that's just an example of how a data point can be utilized to help serve others in the church, because now they can call through that list and say, Maud needs some help over here. Can you go to her house and help her out? John needs some help over here. Can you go help him out? So having those things and tracking those things is really powerful, not just for the sake of having data and say, look how many plumbers we have in the church.
Right,
look what we can do when we go to put new bathrooms in the church building. No, we can use that for other things.
Absolutely.
And people, I will say too, another thing, people can download their own statements, but they can, if the church allows them, they can plug in their own skills and talents. So
oh, wow.
People can actually start building out the database for the administrators. Again, I say that carefully because the administrator makes the list. They choose what they can and can't add. They choose what they can and can't see. So, but that can be a really great feature.
Well, definitely. And then it saves you so much time of just like, hounding everybody and asking, do you all want to serve in the nursery? Do you all want to serve on the hospitality team? You can hone it in, and then you're actually getting responses from people because you're targeting them effectively. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any other like unique features about Servantkeeper, or maybe anything that makes it different or special from some of the software you've seen? I know you've talked about that a lot of the other ones out there they don't have the same powerful to user-friendly ratio.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really significant. But is there anything else that you would want anyone, who may be considering Servantkeeper to know about?
I'd say right now, one of the unique things too, a lot of the things that I've already said, so I don't want to be redundant, but one other thing I could think of, Servantkeeper is a whole suite of tools. Mm-hmm. A lot of systems are either locally software-based, some are totally web-based, which is great. The problem is when you're out in the field and you got to log in on a website on your phone, and like try to do Facebook without the Facebook app. Okay. Mm. So Servantkeeper is a whole suite of tools. So there's the mobile ministry app for going out and doing ministry. There's an app for taking attendance, and it's designed to help you do the most that you can do in the easiest way in that situation. Like a pastor's not going to pull out their laptop and put notes in at the hospital.
Right.
Okay. So, but it all syncs together. So that's one of the unique things. Another thing is just kind of maybe this is a small point for some people, but I've always found Servantkeeper to be so powerful when it comes to user security. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons a lot of churches get Excel spreadsheets, so like finance team has one, membership secretary has one, is because they don't want people to have access to that data, and that's a good thing. But Servantkeeper has hundreds of different layers of security. So I could say somebody can log on to the contribution side of the program and they can enter donations, but they can't pull reports and they can't see who's giving and they can't see what their gifts were in the past. And you can have so many different combinations of that, and you can copy user privileges from other people, so you're not spending all your time coming up with that. So maybe that's kind of getting in the weeds, but that is another unique thing that I find, because a lot of systems out there basically are like, you're an admin, mm-hmm. Or you're a user, or you're a member of the church.
Right.
So we need to be able to give people access to all in one database, have everything in mm-hmm. one place, and yet still feel good about security. Even private notes. A pastor can save a note on the phone and share it with a specific staff member.
Oh, wow.
And have it emailed to them, so they don't have to worry about somebody else seeing that note.
Right. I was actually thinking that earlier when we were talking about, like what kind of car even down to what kind of car you drive. Yep. I was thinking that in some people's minds that might flag as like, I don't want everyone in my church like knowing what I drive and where I am and how much I'm giving, and like that like might be a little bit, alarming to some people. So I think It is really great to highlight how secure it is. And that's really interesting too, because I haven't seen that before either, where you can like designate who sees what. You're right. Normally it's just like either an admin or a user,
Yeah.
So I think that is really, really cool. If someone is interested in learning more about Servantkeeper as we wrap up here, or if they want to get connected with you and your team, what's their best approach? Do you guys do any sort of like demonstration or like walkthrough? Do y'all have any sort of thing like that?
Absolutely. Well, in connection with you folks here, if you're going to be looking for a demo, I would go to www.servantpc.com/summit. So we have a link for that. So servantpc.com/summit. You can go to the main website for just overall general information, servantpc.com. And then you can also dial the sales number. It's 800-773-7570. And we can get you in touch with somebody and walk you through a little demo of Servantkeeper and kind of learn what your needs are.
That is awesome. And also Servantkeeper, you, John, and some of your team will be joining us for the CHMS Summit, which is coming up. If you're listening to this podcast after the fact, it is available for replay at chmssummit.com. And Servantkeeper has given us a lot of videos that talk about how to use their software, how to use church software in general, and some really, really great stuff all in there. And so we will put all of that information in the show notes for you and make sure that you can access it if you're interested. John, thank you so much for being with us today. I think this was super helpful, and I can't wait to see what our audience, thinks of this, because I think this is really important, and I'm really glad you're here to talk to us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Church Communications Podcast. If you want to learn more, join over 30,000 church leaders in our Facebook group at churchcommunications.com/group. If you liked today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It's the most impactful way you can help us reach more church leaders and equip them to better communicate for the church. Finally, don't forget to check out our website at churchcommunications.com. Thanks for listening.